All right, welcome and good morning, good afternoon, and good whatever to your day or your night or your week. For our last lesson in I say this segment of the week for Radio 2, lesson 56, H22H Radio 23, part-timers, combining news, sports, traffic, and weather, part 11 of 12, nearly done there. We can have a look at Valerie Geller's book, which is chapter 19, The Sound of the Story, page 223 to 227, as well as Nash and Cullinan's Next Level Radio, chapter 5, 5.3.7, Integrating Audio, 206 to 208. It's quite a short lesson. We're going to listen to some news and going to just have a bit of we're going to deconstruct that and have some feedback, talk about it in the next slide, and then we'll just close up with a couple of slides, some notes, and well, that's nothing better than just getting on with it, eh? Let's get started. Excuse me, right? All right, so let's listen to the first clip over here. We'll analyze it. Oops, that's not it. I should click. Go on.
This is Eyewitness News.
Good morning, I'm Tara Penny. We start with the latest from Afghanistan. Reuters is reporting that 5 people were killed in the chaos at Kabul airport this morning as U.S. troops guarded the evacuation of embassy staff just a day after the Taliban seized the capital. It's not immediately clear how the victims died. A U.S. official said troops had fired in the air to deter people trying to force their way onto a military flight that was set to take U.S. diplomats and embassy staff out of the fallen city. Frantic scenes broke out overnight as Taliban officials declared the war was over and issued statements aimed at calming the panic that's been building in Kabul as the militants, who ruled from 1996 to 2001, surrendered the US-backed government forces. President Ashraf Ghani fled from the country yesterday as the Islamists entered Kabul virtually unopposed, saying he wanted to avoid bloodshed. Taliban spokesperson Suhail Shaheen said in a message on Twitter their fighters were under strict orders not to harm anyone. It took the Taliban just over a week to seize control of the country after a lightning sweep that ended in Kabul, as government forces, trained for years and equipped by the United States and others at a cost of billions of dollars, melted away. Al Jazeera has broadcast footage of what it said were Taliban commanders in the presidential palace, surrounded by dozens of armed fighters. Back home now, the South.
Okay, so I want to let's quickly just analyze that, and again, like I say, deconstruct the first bulletin there. I say when it's a bit out of the ordinary of what we say. We normally start with our top stories leading here in South Africa, but this is a little bit of a different approach because we're looking at 702. 702 will obviously be like when I say leading talk, they're obviously a leading talk, right? But when we compare different news, I could say construction, should I say, from different stations, or they'll take different liberties. And we've said to you that, for example, like there's just the structure of shows and the way that we construct certain features and the way we construct music compilation or whatever it may be. We teach you the basics. When I say the basics, the fundamentals of how it is done, that it is done and it'll work. And that is the basis on which every radio station that you'll find will start to try and test their own formula and approach to what it is that they might feel is better. This is also maybe just, I mean, it's one particular bulletin, so we can't really say that they always are going to start with a international story. It is obviously quote unquote breaking news. It's quite a big thing, like obviously with the Taliban, etc. And I think it was their prime minister, whatever it is, or their leader, not Taliban, should I say, but the political leader was, he was, I want to say extracted, but we might as well, right? Okay, here, I want you to note that obviously we're looking at one, let's say on average, what is it? Maybe two, maybe 118. So 118 for a bulletin. I'm saying the story itself. So again, as you said with talk radio, the news is it's extensive. So we're talking at least I don't know, about, I would say about 9 sentences. You could see that, I think it was Tara that was speaking, is quite detailed, where, the differences between talk radio and music radio. We have much smaller stories, shorter stories, again, whereas it is expected to have a much longer bulletin, much more detailed. Not yet a soundbite included, but I'm expecting it to come. Let's look at the local story that Tara goes on with.
African Medical Association has encouraged medical practitioners to support the country's COVID-19 vaccination campaign. A prominent heart surgeon has landed herself in trouble for her anti-vax views. SAMA has dispelled any doubts about safety and efficacy of these vaccines, stressing jabs have been put through rigorous testing by the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority. Kevin Brunt reports.
The South African Medical Association has condemned anti-COVID-19 vaccination sentiments expressed by some healthcare workers. SALMA stresses this only fuels vaccine hesitancy. Chairperson Dr. Angelique Kutsia says the benefits of coronavirus vaccines have been scientifically proven.
SALMA cannot support doctors who are giving out anti-vaccination sentiment to their patients, which is contrary to the pandemic, to the WHO regulations.
The Netcare Hospital Group has last week dissociated itself from anti-COVID-19 vaccination comments made by renowned heart surgeon Dr. Susan Vosloo. Kevin Brand, Eyewitness News.
Right, so that's a nice, it's a nice construction of a great link that includes added elements like our sound bite, and the soundbite actually has another soundbite in it. So we have a field reporter that is on the story, that's on, that's obviously dedicated and has been also allocated that particular story to follow by the news editor. We have obviously the anchor, as you know, Tara is busy reporting on the story, and it is factual, but it is also, which I think is an obvious statement, but it is it's present, it's today, it's new, right? So again, also note that the use of present tense and obviously the way that that is super important for the basis of its qualifying as news is it's just mandatory, right? Again, nice, so it's a very nice sound bite there. A little bit, I wouldn't have done a sound clip within a sound clip. I think it sounded, as you can see, the quality kind of just like lowered a little bit more. And I would have just perhaps maybe gone with either the sound bite, which quotes the lady that was speaking there, and perhaps maybe left the field reporter out of it, unless we went to the field reporter live, then played the soundbite, came back to the news. That would have sounded nicer.
The ANC in the Northwest says it will only announce a new premier for the province after meeting and communicating with the relevant structures. Interim Provincial Committee Coordinator Hlomane Chauke has told Eyewitness News no new appointments will be announced today. He also says there's no agreed date for when current Premier Job Mokgoro should step down. Mokgoro and the IPC have been at loggerheads for at least a year now. In April, Eyewitness News revealed that the Provincial Committee had complained to ANC leaders, claiming the Premier ignored party leadership and was running a rogue unit from his office. Last month, the ANC at Luthuli House interviewed 3 potential replacements for Mokgoro. The Premier was brought in 2018 following then Premier and ANC Chair Supremo Pelo's early retirement. Chauke says the IPC will hold a meeting today.
It's only now that we're going to be interacting with the structure, meaning that to communicate the division of the upper structure that comes from the Luthuli House. So we have not yet finalized, and we're not going to be announcing today. We are still busy currently trying to resolve technical matters that will not conclude.
2 suspects are expected.
So just to note this, that's nice local story. So obviously second most important local story. We had the top story just before that. Moving into obviously the rebate on the ANC. Again, so we want to look at, let's say, delivery, for example, right? Very formal, yet very relaxed, yet very powerful. And again, it's about that mindset of knowing that, listen, yeah, like I have the knowledge and I'm going to share that, right? So as Tara then goes and she has her little her moments and inflections, where she pauses for effect, and she then delivers, let's say, what happens, let's say the 2, 3, or 4 words that happen after that particular comma, which is actually validated to put in. I told you before, don't use a comma as a way to just join sentences. If it is there, it's basically for like a dramatic pause, and then or a he said comma, whatever it may be, or he says comma, and then whatever it may be. And so in terms of like punctuation, I would say that is fine. Understand not to obviously add to different facts of the story, right? But you see that the sentences are very short as well. Her technique is it's sound. When I say sound, as she moves through those simple, like I say, very short sentences that have one fact per sentence, it becomes basically like it sounds so easy for her to do. Nice soundbite there as well. Note that the soundbites actually shouldn't be longer than, I think, man, 50 seconds is, I think, way too long. About 30 seconds, 35 seconds at a maximum. We are again on talk radio right here, so we have a little bit of a liberty to go between 30 and 40 seconds, right? Ideally, on music, want to try and keep it, the bulletin itself to something that's in total is about maybe 3.5 minutes or so. So just to keep that in mind, different elements there.
To appear in the Palm Ridge Specialized Commercial Crimes Court in connection with multi-million rand tender fraud at the National Health Laboratory Services. Those suspects were arrested yesterday by the Hawks following an investigation into corruption in the procurement of personal protective equipment amounting to 14.4 million rand. The laboratory services have embroiled themselves in tender irregularity scandals following probes by the Special Investigating Unit. Hawk spokesperson Katlego Mogale says the pair, along with a company which has not been named, will be answering to charges relating to the contravention of the Public Finance Management Act.
2 suspects as well as a company are expected to appear in the Palm Ridge Specialized Commercial Crimes Court after they were arrested by the Serious Corruption Investigation of the Hawks. This follows a thorough investigation into the allegation of tender fraud at the National Health Laboratory Services.
Okay, so once again, we can see that the immediate critic we're going to give that is on the soundbite itself, where it becomes like that weird jarring sound towards the end there, which is that is caused by maybe, well, I'm not going to say like a phone, because obviously we use portable mics. So I say that's a portable mic. So it is portable. It's a portable mic. It has no wiring or whatever. You record into a USB that's placed into this, like I said, this portable mic. Anyway, and you can actually hear that this particular field journalist, whatever it is, wherever they got the soundbite from, had obviously not considered obviously they used that little kind of like that went on there. That's I'm going to say atmospheric influence, right? It's not exactly a wind or anything. It's a brush against like a bag or whatever it may be, close to the mic, right? Regardless of how that turned out, the soundbite should have been then edited enough, because the lady who was speaking there had said enough. She obviously said enough throughout whatever she was releasing at a press conference, where she was obviously making a statement, to have drawn what we needed to draw. It's always not necessary to put in a soundbite if you can just rather quote it and rather not risk the whole thing about quality. Also note the tightness between the as Tara is speaking, and immediately, like as she stops, she will play, because she's in control right now. When I say control, the news reader will have their own studio most of the time, with their own PC and their own software and whatever it is. And when they go back to the newsroom, they will go and obviously prep their news, but they'll also prep the sound bites. They'll load it onto the system, and so that the DJ doesn't have to try and be in sync with them at all. We did do that for a long time until these systems were made, obviously, like I say, commercially available, so easily accessible. and then the new staff went to that training, and then it sounds much better, right? Okay, I think we're going to go into the last two stories.
Ambassador to South Africa, Jacques Baril, says international aid agencies in neighboring countries are working to provide support for Haiti in the wake of the latest devastating earthquake. The 7.2 magnitude tremor struck over the weekend, killing more than 1,000 people there. Thousands more are now in urgent need of medical care. The ambassador is warning these numbers are expected to rise over the coming days as rescue operations continue. Prime Minister Ariel Henry has declared a state of emergency and has travelled to affected areas to assess the extent of the damage. He's put out an appeal for assistance in the form of medical supplies. Gold's at 1,700.
Note there. So when we speak about tail enders, you can see that obviously talk radio, it's not, again, this is just one example. They do talk about light stuff as well, but the format specifically right here, maybe 702 is dictated. Listen, let's go with a varied amount of how we're going to view a tail ender. You know, you can hear that is it's obviously bypass news, so something that is something I want to mention, but it isn't as important, definitely, or even I say worldly, of worldly, yes, I must get that right, worldly relevance, right? Okay, as the other stories were, but definitely something that the listener would, just we'll say, okay, well, I didn't know that. Let's just see where that obviously pans out, or there was a bit of a tragedy or whatever it may have been, right? Ideally, we do want to move over to something a bit more light, and definitely in talk there's always room, to put some focusing on sciences, astrology, not astrology, like I say, what is space? I want to say space, but I sound like 6 year old. Whatever it is, like anything that's being related to space science. I don't know. God, I'm going to stop with the space. I'm not going to find it, right? Irregardless human interest, that type of thing, right? We're now going into the expected financial indicators. Let's have a listen.
$73.73 an ounce. The rand's at 14.74 to the dollar, 20.43 to the pound, 17.37 to the euro. Brent crude oil's at $70.31 a barrel.
Heading into the Pretoria CBD, traffic remains a mess. This is coming from Soshanguve. Expect more than a 20-minute delay on the R80 southbound Mabopane Highway from Bremer to Skiam Patlele. Also bumper traffic in Claremont on Bremer Street between the R80 and the Dustport Tunnel. Capital Park, expect more than a 30-minute delay. This is on Paul Kruger from Transnet Avenue all the way to Struben. This is all due to an earlier accident.
A fine day in store for Gauteng, becoming cloudy later on. The temperatures will peak at highs of 18 and 20 degrees. The developing story in Eyewitness News this hour. Reuters is reporting that 5 people were killed in the chaos at Kabul airport in Afghanistan this morning as U.S. troops guarded the evacuation of embassy staff just the day after the Taliban seized the capital.
Right. Okay, so you go to the traffic reporting at a talk station will have their own station, should I say, within the newsroom. That's presented there was broadcasting literally from the office, right? So from the office, they've got their own PA headphones, they've got their own mic, whatever it is. You've got that little bit of ambience, which is great as well. Now, obviously, you can see that there was a bit of a technical flaw. The mic was not up. And it was obviously she's also in control of that as well. So a little bit of tightness that's been kind of like I say tainted, right? But still a nice useful traffic report there, and that calls to the end of it. That last line, I mean, the last top headline, obviously revisiting that was a bit too long. Right. And there was one other thing. Oh, aeronautical. There we go. I figured it out. Patting myself in the back. Let's listen to the second one as well.
SABC News, independent and impartial.
It's just gone 3 o'clock in the news this afternoon. The EFF calls for prosecution in the Marikana tragedy and delay in the announcement of a new Northwest Premier.
And in your sport, the Paralympics to be held without spectators, and Pereira has contracted COVID-19 before the South African series. I'll have details at the bottom of the hour.
Our top story this hour, the EFF has called on the National Prosecuting Authority to prosecute President Cyril Ramaphosa following the deaths of miners in Marikana in the northwest 9 years ago. At the time, Ramaphosa was a non-executive director at Lonmin, the company involved in the labour dispute with workers. Malema says if the NPA fails to take an action, they will act.
We want to call upon the legal representatives to intensify that case to ensure that our people, survivors, and the families of those who are dead are paid both by the state and Cyril Ramaphosa as an individual. And if they are not going to prosecute Ramaphosa, they must issue a non-prosecuting letter as the EFF want to prosecute Ramaphosa.
If fails to take an action, they will act. They're following the virtual 9th.
All right, so we can obviously see the difference between, let's say, now we're comparing privatized stations with the SABC News. Just as a sidebar, like it's a mandate to always cover if there's a story that leads around the ANC because they have they deserve, this particular rights that the SABC, which is obviously our national broadcast, it's government obviously funded or owned or run or whatever it is. That you always cover our leading party. So we'll always see that the predominant top story is always ANC related, even if this is something that we're having our president and obviously the threat of him being obviously going to court or legal action being taken against him. And the EFF speaking about it, it still has to do with the ANC, right? What's also nice is that again, there's that variation, that kind of like metamorphosis of different ways and styles that we can actually compile the news together. So we had that little sports update, which is quite nice as well. And then probably 10 to 1 traffic's going to come towards the end there. Let's keep listening to the story. I might have cut it just a bit short there just to get it, let's just go on.
Marikana commemoration on social media platforms. Itumeleng Hajane reports.
They are singing pro Joseph Matundra and Amku songs at the Kopi, waiting for the moment to lay wreaths at the Kopi, where 34 of their colleagues were killed by police. It has been tradition that wreaths should be laid at 3 o'clock in the afternoon during the commemoration.
Let's stay in the northwest.
Very nice. Just a quick note on the soundbite. That's nice. Using the ambience, using the atmosphere. Love the obviously chanting and singing in the background. The reporter is clear. So I think I've said this to you before in previous lessons. Like when you are going to be doing, let's say, a soundbite or a Vox or whatever it is that you are recording, and you do have atmospheric presence, like you hear the singing and chanting, like you must be far away enough to not be drowned out by whatever it is that's happening in the background, but you do want it for that ambience, and it definitely adds to the story. So really great work from that field reporter.
Where the highly expected announcement of a new premier has been delayed, the ANC Interim Provincial Committee was expected to make the announcement for the replacement of Premier Job Mokgoro this morning. The IPC has been calling for the removal of Mokgoro, who it accuses of not taking instructions from the party. Patrick Dindwa has more.
It is expected that Mokgoro should first resign as both Premier and a member of the legislature to make way for the Premier-elect, who is currently not a member of the legislature. The party will then update its list of members in the legislature with the IEC.
So what's, out of the two, I'm not going to say that the one is better than the other. I prefer, obviously, the SABC one at this point. The stories are nice and short. It is obviously for music or radio in terms of, like, you can see, let's say the time 2:38 that we've passed, so let's say 2:30, including a jingle there. That was in the beginning. And we've covered 3 stories, so we're talking about, let's say, about 45 seconds maybe each, and so we're looking at about, I would say about 6 to maybe, 6 sentences, I would say. But nice and short and sweet. And all the information is there. She's a great, obviously, anchor. That really nice. I prefer her to Tara, just because it's a personal preference. I like that kind of like very, that clean, very professional, and again very dominant. And do not read anything like dirty into that, but that kind of like very dominant, female voice that's confident and has power. So that's very nice. This is a great report.
Take you to Cape Town now, where the
Oh yeah, and I just want to say, note how that we start with local news, right? So in this one, as a variation to, let's say, whatever Tara did and decided to go with the more breaking news in international, right?
Athlone Stadium is set to become another mass vaccination site in the Western Cape with drive-through lanes. Provincial authorities say the facility will have 40 vaccination stations operational by the end of August. The site will be able to deliver about 4,000 jabs a day. The Western Cape is currently in the third wave of the pandemic with over 42,000 active cases. And finally, Zambia.
Okay, so again, just to note, not again on the story, but note how the stories are actually becoming more regional, right? And we go from national importance, go from most important, quote unquote, to maybe less important in terms of like how many people this is affecting. It's important for us to know how the Cape is obviously doing. Suppose this is being heard on a national SABC station. I doubt it is. I'm sure it's obviously one of the. It's maybe it's. It could be anywhere. Like it could be on Good Hope. If it is on Metro, then it would make sense that we do cover a little bit of the Cape or do cover a little bit of Durban or wherever it is, depending on where the news is actually sitting at. But again, nice story.
President Edgar Lungu says he is committed to a peaceful and successful transition of power. Delivering his concession speech, Lungu has also congratulated his successor, Hakainde Hichilema. Lungu says he accepts and respects the Electoral Commission's results.
I will comply with the constitutional provisions for a peaceful transition of power. I would therefore like to congratulate my brother, the President-elect, His Excellency Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, for becoming the 7th Republican President. I would like to thank all those who voted for my party, the Patriotic Front.
Our top story this hour.
Okay, so just a little bit of news beyond South Africa, or a little bit broader there. The soundbite wasn't so great, a little bit distorting, whatever it may be. Not hearing a tail ender right now, which is surprising, right? And not exactly the norm. But again, like I say, the stations will do what they feel might be a better execution or a better product. Like I say, a mutated product of what is coming from research and their own, let's say, focus groups or whatever it may be. So what they'll do is they cater, and again, you listen to different stations. Different stations will have different formulas and I say melodies, right? To what they might feel at that point in their, like I say, in their lifespan. Might be the best way of presenting or producing a particular element, or on radio.
Well, the EFF has called on the National Prosecuting Authority to prosecute President Cyril Ramaphosa following the deaths of miners in Marikana in the Northwest 9 years ago. For Metro FM News, I'm Lindy Sarame. If you're watching the time, it is 4 after 3, and this is the King Suite.
SABC News, independent and impartial. Allow me to introduce myself.
Right, okay, great. Let's go to the slides. I hope you made some notes there as well to make note for yourself. I think you do actually have to do news at some other point. I'm not sure whether it's in an assignment. I can't remember. I have to go back and see. But definitely something that you should compile and record for yourself as well. And maybe, please, not maybe, it would be nice to send it through to me so we can have a bit of discussion. Maybe I can have a one-on-one with you as well. Okay. All right, let's quickly close up the rest of the notes here, or the slides. So in radio, we use sound to bring stories to life. So as you heard, there was sound bites, the sound integration with the pops, the field reporter is reporting, or we have the actual Vox from something that we have recorded, or we might actually go find it like online and put that in. So we want to make our news stories, our sports stories, our traffic, even our weather. We might cross over to obviously like like a weather specialist. And all this. I don't want to say that they're. I keep saying that they're meteorologists. They're not. They're definitely not that. But and they're not weatherologists. That's a made-up word, right? For someone who doesn't know what they are. But anyway, but the point is that they are. Let's like to a weather journalist. Like a. All right, and then maybe have them bring in and speak when just kind of like really pull in a really rich and a very full weather report with traffic. We can have people that are actually so if you can imagine kind of the olden days when people used to actually travel on helicopters or whatever it may have been. Maybe not here in South Africa. They definitely did it in the States, and they would do an eye in the sky, right? And they would report to the studios and say, well, look, I mean, like, there is the full report, but we are also witnessing like this and this and this, and they make news out of actually what is happening on the roads. Okay. All right, so these Vox Pops are usually conducted as either public opinion surveys, limited surveys, street polls, whatever it may be, anything that we can actually get the people talking. With Vox Pops, we want to talk to the person, quote unquote, on the street most of the time to see what, let's say, let's say the average South African is saying, but we can also, again, as you heard, that we can talk to the person of interest and get their feedback. It's like public opinion surveys need to be conducted scientifically by a market research company that specializes in such surveys. So if you're going to go the long route and you want to work on stats and you want to include some numbers, then rather go about it the actual proper way, right? Limited surveys can be conducted by you as a journalist with the support of the newsroom. And you can just actually, you can draw up a questionnaire, put it up on social media right now, get some feedback, and then report on that as well. And then street polls must be used to gather statistical information, right? So street polls of us actually going there and finding out exactly what is going on. And don't think of the actual street poll, the actual literal device, or no, the object itself, should I say, not device. Um, but an actual like us going out there and finding out what people are saying, yes, no, no, yes, let's document that, let's report that, and let's also throw in a couple of voice or soundbite segments to that. So prepare a single simple open-minded question when you are also asking people for boxes. The thing is that you should want to also be able to vary that particular one question in different ways. So if let's say there was I don't know, let's say the car train, there was some kind of incident. I'm not going to say it crashed or whatever it is, but maybe there was some kind of incident that people were, I mean, under some kind of threat or whatever it may be. And we want to find out like how like how are you feeling, or what is like are you hurt, were you worried, that type of stuff, right? All of those things have to do with the actual, I don't know, whatever it is, incident, right? But we would have different voxes. I'm saying responses from those particular people that were involved in this particular incident, right? As I said, and then we compile something great or something, or pick one of the best to actually put in our bulletins itself. Okay, our bulletin itself. Check that equipment is definitely working, please. So when you do take your equipment, like I said, like those portable mics, whatever it is, roving mics, that's what they call, right? You want to do it on your cell phone, which is just as good, right? So I mean, we don't live in the Stone Ages anymore. Just make sure that you do test for that kind of like if there is a little bit of wind, like how much of that is affecting you and your interview. So maybe you are field reporting and it's not just a Vox, but rather an interview that should actually be going up later as a full podcast, on the site, whatever it may be, and only segments of that might be drawn or extracted for the bulletin itself. Make sure that it is good, right? Okay, don't be the person that gets that interview or gets that opportunity once and only once, and it's you only go back and you listen to it and you say, well, I can't even use this, and what a joke! I can't even go back and do it again because that time has passed, right? Okay, choose a good location. Like I say, make sure that it is sound friendly, audible friendly, right? And be friendly and relaxed with the interviewees because you want the best out of them. And also, you want them to talk without any kind of like restrictions or, apprehensions as to, or, I want to Well, they might feel uncomfortable with you. Yeah, yeah. You want to get the news, you want to get the full truth, right? Nothing but the truth. Okay, interview enough people for your needs to see who might be a better option, right? As opposed to just the first person that you're chatting to. All right, choose very strong comments from what you do record, right? Stuff that is going to help the story move along, add value to it, and as well as answer your alternative, I say, so your angle that you're taking on the story. Remember, there are many, many, many countless, when I say countless, stations that are covering the same news at any one point, whatever it is. I say countless because you just don't know who is covering what, and you'll never will because you're going to be sitting there forever. I mean, you can understand why that's logic, right? So just make sure that you are asking enough so that you can make sure um, that you are getting the best. Okay, do not keep repeating the question. As I just said, they try and vary the different aspects of that umbrella question so you can get different responses. Right? Choose a variety of sounds and opinions while keeping the order in which you are presenting the sound bites in mind. So, if you are trying to build up something that might seem quote unquote chronological, or it needs to build up one on the other, one sound bite would be better as a second or third or fourth in place. So then it being maybe the first one, just because maybe this person is more vibrant, it doesn't necessarily mean that what they are saying needs to come first, right? Okay, make sure that all your sound levels are correct, and if not, I mean, at least good enough for you to go back and edit that in post-production, right? Okay, I say post-production, so obviously post the recording itself, go back post-production on obviously in sound editing software, okay? These days, you should know also how to use apps that there are. I mean, there's Audition for your own phone. There's very, very advanced voice recorders that you can just get that are great. I actually used my first one yesterday. Not my first, but my first latest update, which is really great when I did some chats for my current pre-production for my podcast series, my new one. And it was great. I was really happy with it. Always don't be okay. Don't settle for what you just know as well. Go and see what's in the Play stores. Go see what's available to you. But also, being in newsroom, you will have someone that already knows and has used certain software that is better, and they will say, "No, use this. Definitely, this is the standard that we're using in in this at this station right now." Anyway. Right. Okay. So Vox pops, right? Are sound or is as sound as you are usually positioned between bulletins, as you heard there. Like pretty much, it almost became a mandate. With every one of those stories, there was a soundbite that was included from the results of the aforementioned surveys, polls, stories, whatever it is. So we can just add that, that closure, and that's the kind of that other dimension that stories do actually need. Voice records or records must be clear and they must be mixed at the right volume for on-air play out, right? So as you heard in the bulletin, I was saying to the one is far too distorted. Maybe again we have to not always just settle, rather to say, is it worth putting it on there just to risk a little bit of quality? No, not really. Or is it necessary that we do have that quote and maybe do risk a bit of quality because the quote is for its authenticity, and also its it's obviously quality or whatever it may be, and for our own I was gonna say, man, yeah, well, basically it makes us sound more efficient, right? Okay. Right, okay. Right. And the sound of the story, the power of the story lies in its sound, right? So both obviously in the execution of the story itself by the news reader, as well as every element that you do decide to include there, as we did here, the two particular examples that did include field reporters in soundbites, Voxes, and so on and so forth, right? Whenever possible, record and use natural sound. So try and not use let's say, like the YouTubes or whatever it is. Try go out there and find your own sound. And if you are covering parades, festivals, or demonstrations, this is obvious, right? You're going to get the clearest and rawest and obviously the most relevant sound that you are looking for. Right. Let's close it up there with 3 points here. Sometimes it works very well when a reporter expresses genuine feelings about a story without making it too sensationalistic, right? So definitely when you are experiencing tragedy, right, you must use kind of emotive words, but that do not go beyond the border of sensationalism, right? So stay objective. That is very important. Keep your facts, but retain obviously your humanity. Both presenters did not sound like robots. They just sounded like someone that we could listen to, and you could hear a little bit of inflection here and there when something was a bit more. There was a need for, like I say, putting some more emphasis in there, right? Okay, one CNN reporter covering the massive hurricane that overwhelmed the entire city of New Orleans changed many Americans' expectations of reporting from disaster zones because of that kind of human connection. That's, a broadcasting news journalist, whatever it is going to be right in the middle. You're going to be there with finding, again, children's bodies that are trashed, and I'm saying garbage that you have to report on. It might not be not be visual to the listener, but it's visual to you, and you will have a certain reaction to it. Just tone down obviously your emotions and make sure that you do include emotive language and diction within your story itself. Last point there. While it's been best to keep opinion out of the news, wherever there is a personal connection to a story on the part of the reporter, there is potential for more powerful radio. That's the end of the lesson. Hope you learned something. See you next week.